Welcome to the Love Fly podcast. It's Paul Tizard here. And today's guest is Eduardo, who joins us from the Love Fly, Fear of Flying Facebook group. Welcome. So nice to meet you, Eduardo, and welcome to the podcast.
Well, you as well. A pleasure. It feels a little bit bizarre because I've been listening to all of the podcasts. Well, not all of the episodes, but
I just really hope that you've got something useful from the podcast, because it sounds like you've got quite a good story to share, and I'm intrigued. It's always nice when I've seen some of your posts, and I was thinking, okay, this could be a good one. Tell us your story. What's your Fear of Flying story, and how'd you find us? And go for it.
So I'm a 45-year-old attorney. I live in Puerto Rico. I'm also a wine blogger. That's a hobby, like a side hustle. We have a reach of about 400,000 people a month in my
Wow.
my platforms. Yeah, wine is something that I really, really enjoy. Wine culture. Don't think I am an alcoholic, please. Wine culture in general,
No
traveling
judgment.
and meeting people behind the vineyards. And I'm actually going to Europe in 2.5 weeks. I'm traveling from San Juan, Puerto Rico. I should have started with that. I live in beautiful, sunny Puerto Rico in the Caribbean. And I'm flying out to Madrid with my wife, my 10-year-old son, and my in-laws. And we're going to be visiting 4 or 5 different wineries, which is going to be very cool. Let's go back to the Fear of Flying. So I was born in Ecuador, South America, right in the middle of the Andes mountain, right? So, growing up, I would see my mom whenever we had the opportunity to travel, take out her rosary and her religious figures and say a prayer and do the sign of the cross before taking off. So in my head, I would associate, or I associated, I guess, flying with something dangerous, right? Something that needed God's protection from. So in a way, not in a way, in many ways, or in all ways, when you're that young, I guess you absorb everything and from
Definitely.
right. So maybe I was in a couple of bumpy flights here and there, nothing major. But when you're that young and you don't understand the mechanics of flying, and then you think in your head, hey, my mom was praying, maybe we're about to die. It built up, right? It built up.
Yeah.
And then we had a very difficult departure from my country of birth, from Ecuador. We had financial troubles. A lot of people in South America, when they encounter financial troubles, they migrate and they move someplace else. So we ended up in Puerto Rico instead of the U.S., which a lot of people move directly to the U.S. We ended up in Puerto Rico, which is an American territory, right? It has a lot of the benefits as U.S. citizens have in the States. Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens by birth. I'm a U.S. citizen as well. So we got here. I was about 14 years old. And then there were also some issues with my family. My father was schizophrenic. My brother was bipolar. He eventually took his own life.
Oh my
So
goodness.
it was hard. So it was there was a lot of chaos in that formative years, 14, 15, 16, 17. And I'm the only male who's still alive in my family. I have 2 sisters and my mom's still alive. So the 2 sort of paternal figures that I had, my father and my brother was 6 years older than I am, sort of, short-circuited, for the lack of a better word. So there was this sense of abandonment in me. I had a very happy childhood. My parents were very happy, despite my father's mental disease. They were very, very happy. So it has nothing to do whether I had a problematic childhood. I never used drugs. I do consume my good share of wine, but I cannot pinpoint, this fear comes from having been neglected as a child. But I did experience emotional constraints, right, as I was evolving, growing up. So I guess I associated flying with a dangerous activity, and flying with being out of my comfort and control zone, right? and and I didn't fly for a number of years between 92 and I guess 97, 98. And then I had the chance to travel because it was a school related trip to New York. And then I didn't understand anything about flying, right? I would think that when the plane was taking off, it was shaking, it could explode at any moment.
Yeah.
And I've always had a creative mind. I've always had this very, very much healthy imagination. And I would think of these chaotic scenarios, and turbulence was the plane falling down. But then
you did say healthy imagination, didn't you?
Yeah, healthy imagination. I'm an attorney. I was under Secretary of State of Puerto Rico. I've traveled. I've been to Europe. I've been to the U.S. I've been to to the White House for meetings. I've had an accomplished career. Right now, I'm in the private sector. I have my own practice. So I've never not flown out of fear. I've always done it fearfully. I would be the kind of guy that the night before would not be able to sleep, would wake up all in sweat, all wet. And I didn't have nightmares about the plane falling. I did have the anticipatory anxiety, which is the worst sort of.
And how long would you get that before?
3 days, 2 days before. I've heard the podcast, and they're amazing, the stories. And I wouldn't say my case is as bad as others, and I do see that. I say this very respectfully. I've never been one that would not, was not able to go to the bathroom in the plane, was not able to walk around. I've never sort of cried during a flight, but it was something that did not let me enjoy life. And I remember I had a girlfriend. This is 20 years ago. She was living in Boston, and I wanted to go visit her. And I had always had issues with flying alone, being alone. And here you may have that thingy with abandonment, right? Not that I was abandoned intentionally by my brother or my father, but in a way, life put me in situations where I was abandoned by fortuitous and things that were out of my control, right? So I've always had an issue with being alone. I hate driving by myself in motorways. I hate it. I get very anxious. I try to avoid motorways because when you're in a motorway, you sort of cannot escape. Like if you want, because you're stuck in the road and you have cars on the side. I would rather drive longer distances, but just going normal streets with stoplights and whatnot. So I also have that issue. It's not something that well, it is something that creates problems for me in terms of consuming my time, but it's something that I need to work with. Going back to flying, 20 years ago, I had this girlfriend who was living in Boston, and I wanted to go visit her, be with her for a month, enjoy our time together. I was obviously very much in love with her. Now she's happily married with somebody else. I'm super happily married with my wife. And I remember that I was very panicky. This was a year after 9/11, so that was very chaotic on this side of the world. It was terrible, right? And I don't know if you recall that maybe a couple of months after 9/11, there was a plane that fell that was going from New York to the Dominican Republic, and it had nothing to do with terrorism. It was an American Airlines flight that had some sort of issue. I can get it for you. I can get you the link. It had something that was wrong with the flight. 2000, right? And I don't want to trigger anybody with this, but it was a flight bound for the Caribbean, and I was very much scared the night before. I couldn't sleep. I was, texting back and forth with her. Hey, I may not go in the plane. I may not do this. That was the closest I've ever been to not traveling.
Yes.
And at that point, I said, I need to do something about this. I was about to start law school. I knew that I wanted to sort of become my own man, achieve something that neither my father nor my brother could because of their mental health situations. So I've always been very driven towards being successful, not having money, being happy and being successful. So that's when I bumped into, I don't want to mention, I don't know if it's the competition or not, but I bumped into a course based in the US of this pilot, an older guy who was also a psychologist and whatnot. And I enrolled in that. And it did help. It did help. It taught me the mechanics, the science, the marvel that it's commercial aviation, and also the statistics, and of course, all the emotional components to it. But I did that for a couple of years and I flew afterwards with relative calm. It did help to, at the beginning of the plane ride, asked if I could, say hello to the captain or put a face to a voice, and reassure that person who wanted to also get home safely to his or her loved ones. And I did feel better, but it wasn't until I found your podcast and you, and I remember having an interaction with you on the Facebook group about your calming voice, that it felt much more real to me, because the other person that I would exchange emails with was very kind, but he was a former military guy, former commercial pilot, therapist, and I have nothing to do with those things, right? I've never been in the military. I've never been a pilot. And obviously, I'm not a psychologist. And when I bumped into you, I bumped into a community of a lot of other folks who are just like me. So it's like, when you're, I don't know, maybe you're like, let's use an analogy. Maybe if you're in the forest and you're like a little gremlin, you want to find other gremlins. You don't want to find giraffes or lions or bears. You want to find your tribe.
So does that make me a gremlin leader? Or,
you could be, yeah. One of the good
gremlin
ones. Remember that there are some that turn bad. Yeah, no, you're like, and you're like the facilitator. I see you as the conductor of the orchestra. And so the more I studied about aviation and bumping into your podcast, I had a flight, two short flights to be honest with you, about a month ago, and I did tremendously well. I slept the night before. I had been using the podcast, the audio podcast, and the interactions in the Facebook group. So I flew from San Juan to Panama, which is 2 hours and 20 minutes, and from Panama to Guayaquil, which is 2 hours in Ecuador. Went back to be with a family down there. I hadn't been in my country of birth for 31 years, and not because of fear of flying, but because my relatives would come to Puerto Rico, right? So, and I did very well. I was calm, and the more I got into the science of flying and how safe it is, I realized that you here in Puerto Rico, we have devastating storms, hurricanes. We have very, very bad weather conditions, especially in August, September. And every hurricane season, whether there's a tropical storm or a hurricane, you see those little tiny hurricane hunters planes that get inside the eye of the hurricane to take pictures, to take measurements. They bounce like crazy and they come back. They always come back. There's never been an accident. So talk about withstanding turbulence, right? Talk about withstanding force. So that's very reassuring to me. And it feels very much at home, because it's something that happens from Puerto Rico. A lot of those planes that measure the storms take off from Puerto Rico. So
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, they're always in the news, because we are Puerto Rico and the American Virgin Islands, that are 25 minutes in a plane ride from San Juan. They're the enclaves of the U.S. government in the Caribbean. So we do have U.S. military planes, U.S. weather tracking planes, and they're tiny planes, and they fly into hurricanes, and then they come back and they post video of the measurements and how the storm is moving and what can we expect and the force of the winds. The other thing that we have in Puerto Rico, we do have a lot of famous singers: Bad Bunny, J-Lo, Ricky Martin, all of those guys, very famous, very wealthy. And guess what? They all fly in in private planes, which are tiny. Maybe they don't have, well, maybe they do have all the redundancy and the incredible redundancy things that commercial planes have. And guess what? They wouldn't put themselves in danger, right? Flying in smaller planes with without all the things that the commercial planes would get to fly and have. So I've sort of reasoned around how irrational this fear is, and I know you've said that it's not irrational, that we shouldn't use that word. I've heard that in your podcast, but rather how wrong I've been for so many years, right? Thinking that it was dangerous when it's never dangerous. And also I've said to myself, the world is gorgeous. I want to see it. I have friends everywhere. I have people who make wine everywhere that want to see me. And in order for me to get to them, I have to move.
Yeah.
And I have to move either with my legs or through a plane. With my legs, I'll never get there. In a car, hey, Puerto Rico's an island. I cannot drive anywhere. And movement means progress. Movement means going somewhere, getting somewhere, right?
Yes.
And now I'm actually looking forward to my plane trip to Europe in 2.5 weeks. I'll be posting pictures from the vineyards in the group.
That's remarkable. I mean, so it's quite an incredible journey. I'm really interested in what was the turning point, because you've done quite a lot of stuff to help yourself already. You're obviously very driven. Yeah. Well, was it a particular episode or certain guests that helped you to, was there a moment you thought, like, aha, or something? That's what I'm kind of curious, otherwise it's
I don't think there's been a turning point. I think that the turning point is accepting who I am, and accepting that I do have this fear, phobia, respect for flying, this and I've even I've modeled my vocabulary. I no longer use safe travels when I want to tell somebody, hey,
excellent,
always safe. I say smooth travels, because it could be bumpy, but it's safe. So I don't say safe travels because it's always safe. I say smooth travel, smooth flight, right? I guess that I wouldn't say that there's been a turning point. It's just that I accept myself for who I am. And maybe it's something that it's not comfortable, and maybe traveling will not ever be something that I love, but boy, do I love meeting new people and seeing new places. So, and the other thing that I've thought about is that I get anxious driving by myself alone. So I've sort of made this connection. Hey, when I'm in a plane, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to take care of anything. I would be the kind of guy that would check the weather, would check whether it was rainy, would check whether it was, bumpy, turbulence tracker, and all of those things. And I've said, hey, I'm paying a good amount of money for an air ticket, $400, $500, $600. I'm paying for other people, professionals, to take over those jobs. The other thing that I've thought about, and this comes down to trust. You're relinquishing a little bit of your control to a very, very capable, or a couple of very capable human beings in the captain, the first officer, and the crew. Guess what? When you go to the dentist, you are a couple of inches away from a guy or a girl with a knife, with tools who could perforate your neck and kill you right there. So, thanks
for that one. I hadn't thought of that.
There are a lot of instances in your life when you have to trust others.
Yes,
you have to really trust others, and through your podcast, and through the community, and through Captain Steve and Gita's stories, and the whole bunch of people, Michael, who's been there, I've sort of felt accompanied. Well, there are other guys who think the exact same things I'm thinking. And again, I don't think I'll ever. Well, maybe I shouldn't. You never say never, right? But I hope that one day I could get to love flying an airplane, but I don't have to hate it in order to do it. I don't, and I don't think that I'm so special, or particular that I'll be that one incident when there is an accident, right? I just, I just got tired of having that baggage.
Yeah.
Just got tired.
That's really interesting. It's there is a definitely letting go, and also the interesting thing for me then was you correcting yourself, because I was noticing the first couple of times you said it, you go, "Oh, I don't think I'll ever love it. I don't think I'll ever like it," and then you third time out, you've corrected it, and I think that shows great progress in itself, that you're noticing your own language patterns.
Yeah, the other thing that I don't know whether I gathered this from one of your episodes, but it was just so brilliant how, for example, when you're in a cruise liner, you're not really on solid ground. You're probably 2 or 3 miles from the bottom of the sea, where you have steady, solid, gravel, stones, whatever. When you're up in the air, guess what? Like, air at that speed is even more solid than water, right? So if you're gonna be scared if you're gonna be scared in a plane, you should also be scared, I would say, in a cruise liner, right? Let me just hold on for the heck.
Okay, so Eduardo, so you've given us the dentist, you've given us the cruise liner. These are other options available to people.
Things that that sort of pop up in my head whenever I think about this, and I try to, convince myself. I guess as an attorney, I'm advocating how safe and how fine the whole process could, should, and needs to be, as opposed to, this scary kid when I was 12, 13, that I had a couple of bumpy flights. There's no need for me to waste so much energy and time doing it. The thing about fear of flying is that you really got to work on it. It's like a diet. I mean, you cannot lose 30 pounds and then go back to eating, because you're going to get fat again, right? You really do need to work on it and stay on top of things. Like, for the next couple of weeks, I'll be listening to some of the podcasts as I get prepared for my 7-hour plane ride from San Juan to Madrid. Then I have a couple of internal short flights in Europe. But guess what? I'm not thinking about the 7 or 8 hours that I'm going to be in a plane, but rather the 3 weeks that I'll be in Europe. I'm not going to be thinking about the hour and a half, 2 hours of the short internal flights around Europe, but rather the days that I'm going to be in vineyards with my family, meeting winemakers and tasting fantastic Rioja and Tuscan wines, right? That's where I'm going. And you know what? I have to thank the airplane for it. It's I would say is the greatest invention of the 20th century. And let me just share this with you, because it's funny, and I've done it, and I know there are other people who are very scared of flying, at least here in Puerto Rico, because we're an island. The Latino culture is pretty much, I would say, as most people here are Catholics, there's this sense of doom that something bad will happen, that God will punish you or whatever, right? So people tend to pray a lot, and a lot of people do associate traveling with something that's dangerous, unfortunately. So the other day, as I was boarding my flight to Panama, there was this pilot, first officer, walking out of the gate saying, "Hey, you're the guy from the Wine News TV. My blog is called Wine News TV. I follow you. I love your content." And then, "You're a pilot?" "Yeah, I am a pilot with JetBlue, which is pretty big here in Puerto Rico."
Yeah.
And as I was about to departure, like, he sent me a DM through Instagram. I have like 60,000 followers there. "Hey, it was great meeting you. I love your page." And I wasn't following him. And then I followed him. This is a Puerto Rican first officer. And he has the most amazing pictures and videos from the cockpit, right? Amazing content. I will share his link with you afterwards.
Please do.
He has about 130,000 followers. He's young. He's 34. He flies next to a captain, a full-fledged captain, right? But older than he is. So I told him, "Hey, there are a lot of people out there who are anxious flyers, and I've never been one to hide or feel ashamed about fear of flying, right? And I told him, hey, why don't we do a little Instagram video where I can have my viewers ask you about turbulence, about takeoff, about all sorts of things. And he said, yeah, let's do it. And we did it. We had 3,000 people watch the exchange. And everybody was asking, from the most deep personal questions to technical things about, the drops and the air pockets and all of the things that you've spoken about in the chat. And I would love for one day, and I'm making you an invitation here, to maybe do an Instagram live between that pilot, my page, and you.
Love to. Sounds great.
His page is amazing, and he's the most relaxed of guys. And it helps to follow these pilots because you see how they enjoy their lives, how they move from place to place, and how flying is so safe and I learned this through Love Fly, that it's a sit in the sky. You have about 2 million people at any time in the day, or at the busiest time of the day, above our heads. And if flying was dangerous, guess what? The earth would be filled with holes from planes falling down. They never fall. They always land.
Yes, it's remarkable when you think about the dynamic that has to happen for that thing to jump in the air, how much it weighs. I mean, it still blows my mind. But you're right. It's just, I think that, the thing is that there is a risk, but it's managed. And that's the thing, isn't it? So there's no 100% safe anything, but with commercial aviation, there's always bang on about it. We're trying to get it to the point where it's as close as possible. Nothing will ever be 100% safe, but it's not far off.
Nothing. That exercise of setting the cup of water in front of you and seeing how I've done it. It serves. It really helps. But that explains movement, how small or how tiny it is. To me, it's been very beneficial to do the extend your arm with the car, with no movement, and then start driving the car at 5 miles, 10 miles per hour. The air becomes thicker. And once the car is at 40 miles, the air is so thick, it pushes back your arm. And you multiply that times 400, 500 miles per hour, then you can understand how thick air is at that speed that the plane is going to. So that has helped me visualize that the plane is literally on like very solid mud. And it could move, it could wobble here and there. But when that movement starts to happen, of course I repeat the mantra that it's uncomfortable but safe, uncomfortable but safe. But I always come back to those tiny planes going into hurricanes on purpose to take measurements. And, there's a chop here and there. And now the other thing that just, astounds me and really amazes me is how technology has allowed to now be able to predict things, to detect where the turbulence will be. And to me, turbulence has always been the major thing, the major issue, because it's sort of the longest part of the trip. Turbulence can occur at any time. And another thing that helps me to think is that, all right, we're going to encounter turbulence. I expect it. We're going to get out of it. I will realize that turbulence was not dangerous. Why will the next one be? Right? We already faced some. We left it. If we face it again, we will leave it again. And I asked the pilot, my friend, the pilot, Captain Marquez from Puerto Rico, and he said, for us in the cockpit, it's sometimes boring. Like it's such a non-routine thing. And obviously, that those episodes where you've had the pilots explain about the perception in the ear, the inner ear, and how when you're not looking ahead, your senses are heightening and you feel movement more. But once you're like, the pilot told me that when you're up there, it's beautiful, it's gorgeous, but there are times when nothing is happening. Even when there's movement, they know it's so safe, and the movement is so tiny, so small, that I also think about that.
Mm. No, that's really helpful, actually. Some of those
Yeah.
things, and it's nice. There's a so example. One of the things that you said, which I'm really pleased to hear, and it's no small thing, is that you said when you encounter turbulence, blah blah blah, and then you went on to say what about the mud and stuff. So there's two really helpful things. First of all, you didn't say hit turbulence, which a lot of people say, which then gives an unhelpful image of sort of smacking into some sort of wall.
Yeah.
And then you've backed it up with that thing with the hand out the window of the car, and then think how thick and heavy the air is when you're up there going at that sort of speed. I think that's really helpful. Nice reinforcers.
Every one of my fellow Love Fly community members should do that. And I assume a lot of them drive cars, have cars. So, put the park on brake. Obviously, it's going to be a 0 miles per hour. Stick your hand out. Gravity will drop it down. Then start moving the car 5, 10, 15, 20 miles. And you'll see how the air becomes thicker and thicker and thicker. And then if you're at 50 miles and you stick your arm out, it's going to be almost unmovable. It's going to be, you're really going to hit air. But guess what? The air, and I'm going to use the word hit purposefully, intentionally. You said hit turbulence. No, the air that's really not hitting the plane, but lifting it is underneath the plane. You're not hitting anything in front. The lift happens underneath the wings, right? So that's elevating the plane. And that's where the lift occurs. So underneath the plane is where it's really, really like a wall that's holding the plane up, but not hitting it head on. Right? You catch what I'm maybe
I'm getting, yeah, I get it. Yeah.
I'm translating it, but
you're doing great.
Where it's really like a wall is underneath the plane because of, the Bernoulli theorem or whatever. And it's amazing. It's the most remarkable invention of the 20th century. It is.
Yeah, I agree, obviously. And I think we have to put up something you said particularly resonated. And I was thinking with your job, so many people have to put their trust in you, and how you're offering your trust to others. And these people, a couple of people you never meet, unless you're lucky, disembodied voice behind this sort of bulletproof door. We have to hand over responsibility then for our lives. And the way you put it is just, and why not? Because that you'd be paying the sort of money that we pay to go on flights. Got these people with all the treks, the backups, the regulations, etc., etc. There's no finer people to try. I mean, obviously surgeons and stuff, well trained, etc., etc. We would do the same for them, but day in, day out, it's just these huge teams of people that are there to make sure that we're safe. And you've really put that across nicely.
Think about this, Paul. And I'm not doing a Disney World endorsement here. I've always, of course, I've been there many times. This is only 2.5 hours from here, and Orlando is full of Puerto Ricans. But you go into those roller coasters, right? And you entrust your safety to probably a college kid who's pushing a button up and down to make the thing go, right? And there are more accidents. There are more accidents in theme parks. And I don't want to trigger anybody into not visiting theme parks, but I don't think anybody, or at least I don't think a big portion of the people who are waiting in line to ride a roller coaster are thinking, oh, maybe I'm going to die today. Oh, maybe I'm going to die up there. Guess who's driving the machine? A college guy pushing a button up and down. Compare that to the marvel that goes into building a plane and the training of the captain and the crew. So why do you trust the college guy and have nothing against the people operating machines at theme parks? Please pardon if anybody gets offended, but you're putting your trust for a set 5-6 minute, which is what takes for the plane to do the takeoff. 5-6 minutes, right? A lot of people are super scared about takeoff and how dangerous it is. It lasts maybe 5, 6, 7 minutes, and they're very happy in the roller coaster that's being driven, for lack of a better term, by a guy who does not have the training a pilot has.
But, well, they were happy until you said all that, you know.
No, I'm just saying that there are
No, it's a good link. It's a good link.
There are a lot of unconscious instances where you put trust onto other people who are not half as trained as pilots are, and crew members for that matter.
That's very true. And the bit I liked was that quite often people say, I mean, a lot of people who have fear flying won't go on roller coasters anyway, but sometimes they'll say, which is that false comparison, well, I don't like flying, I don't like roller coasters either, like they're the same thing.
So, yeah.
You hear that a lot. So that's great. I mean, obviously you're not saying that. So what's your, people listening there thinking, I want to be like Eduardo, I want to live where you live basically, but I want to be like you. What's your sort of top tips, people who are still struggling?
You should get out of your head a bit and don't think that you're the only one with this fear, with this situation. Stop being embarrassed about this and treat it head on. Accept it, work on it, and don't limit yourself, because there'll be a point in life when, if you avoid this as you get older, eventually we're all going to die from one consequence or another. But it'd be terrible to get to that stage in life and think about all the things that you missed, right? I love this movie Meet Joe Black with Anthony Hopkins and Brad Pitt, and when death is about to take Anthony Hopkins, he says, I have no regrets. There's no better feeling than that. So my tips for people is to study as much about how commercial aviation works. That's the technical side of it. And also dig deep inside yourself about what in your life has caused this to occur, because it has a root in something else. And there's nothing wrong with the plane. There's nothing wrong with the captain. Maybe there's something, I don't want to say wrong, I don't want to insult anybody, but maybe there's something that you need to treat about your own upbringing, because a lot of times people are scared of being scared, or are scared of being embarrassed, of having a panic attack, and everybody thinking and looking at you, hey, you're a weirdo. People are scared of that. And I guess that another suggestion for people is that think about all the plans you make for after your trip. So at a subconscious level, that flying is safe, but were it not safe, you would stop your calendar. You would stop adding things to your calendar on the day of the flight, because, hey, I'm going to die that day. But no, it's safe. You're scared of your reaction. You're not scared of the plane. You're scared of you in a way, right?
I love that. That's very smart.
you're perhaps the one that's dangerous, because you're going to make a panic attack and you're going to embarrass yourself. So it's kind of getting out of yourself and looking at you from afar and think about this. And I saw this on the group the other day. Hey, there's nothing we love more than our kids, right? I have a 10-year-old. There's nothing I wouldn't do for him. The love for kids is animal and is celestial. You die and you kill for them. And if flying was dangerous, I wouldn't let my kid near an airplane. And guess what? My 10-year-old loves airplanes. And for the love of God, he always sees me smiling and happy and teaching him about how flying is awesome. So I would never pass on to him what my mother unconsciously passed on to me. So my suggestion for people is, hey, look at your routine around your traveling dates. Do you stop adding things in your calendar? No, we put things in our calendar for when we're back, because we know we're going to come back. So the rational the rational you knows you're coming back, but then the emotional you is telling you you're dying that day. You're dying that day. No, check your calendar. If you're traveling tomorrow, you're traveling the day after tomorrow, you might as well delete everything, right? You might as well not add anything to your calendar, because guess what? you're dying, right? So
Oh, I love that.
it's we do have to inspect our own lives, our own upbringing. There's nothing wrong with the
Mm,
plane, nothing wrong with the captain, nothing wrong with the crew. And maybe there's nothing wrong with us. It's just a matter of rearranging our thoughts, understanding how planes operate, how pilots get trained, how safe it is to be up there among the clouds, how many planes are up there at all times, how many planes are meant to inspect weather patterns all over the world. Yeah, and keep working at it. Stay engaged with the group. Listen to the podcast. Don't think that you're cured, and that's not the word. I think that the word is you're enlightened about how safe it is and how amazing commercial aviation is in as much as it allows you to see and get to places that are so different than where you're at. For example, I'm in San Juan in the Caribbean. In 3 weeks, I'll hop in a plane, super safe, and in 7.5 hours, I'm gonna be in Europe.
mm.
That's crazy, and that's amazing. And people that sometimes distrust how amazing flying is, guess what? The internet exists and it's totally abstract. This sometimes people get caught up in how illogical it is for something so heavy to be up in the air and how fast it can take me from point A from point A to point B. And this cannot be true. It's too good to be true, right? There's something wrong with it. Have you thought about the internet and allowing you to chat in real time with somebody on the other side of the world, and you don't question the technological marvel that it is, right? So I don't know if I'm making any sense with what I'm
Yeah,
saying,
yeah, you are. Yeah.
but planes exist and they've been around for a long time, for a long
Mm.
time. So yeah, I don't know. I've talked too much, I guess, Paul, but I really would love to have you on my Instagram live and have a chat with my friend, the pilot.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Well, I mean, definitely yes. The other thing I was going to ask was that if you could just mention how people can find you, because that Instagram, I don't know if it's still accessible, that pilot interview that you did or the pilot
Yeah,
chat, that would be great for
yeah,
people
it's
to
it's in
listen
one
to.
of my archives. As soon as I finish this, I'm gonna take a picture of the screen right now. I'm gonna post it because a lot of people that yeah, do that again, please do that again. A lot of people who follow me and who live in Puerto Rico are scared of flying and they
Mm,
cannot drive anywhere. They
mm.
take cruise ships and whatnot. And I'm gonna tag you. I'm gonna tag the captain. I'm gonna send you the link to my chat with him. Everything is in Spanish in that interview, so it's gonna be a bit of a language barrier. But guess what? You do have Spanish speakers in the Love Fly
We
group.
do. We
You
do.
do have you have a Puerto Rican person that I've talked to. So you are creating an amazing community, Paul. And before leaving, I wanted to thank you because you humanize this thing. You humanize it
Thank
because
you.
when you have courses that are sponsored or chaired by and I have nothing against pilots or military people, perhaps they are way too specific in what they do that you cannot relate to them, right? And having this group where people of all walks, all ages, also all different parts of the world, fears, with aspirations, with hopes, we all get to feel like we're part of a larger group. And the other thing that I was thinking about the Law Fly, I've been around the community for a couple of months and I've been part of other communities in social media for a number of years, for more than 10 years.
Mm.
And there's never been a post, hey, guess what, the guy who was here died in a plane crash, because it never happens, right? It never happens. And I do have people that I've known who've been in car crashes,
Yeah.
who've been in accidents, but other fly groups, you never see a post saying, hey, we lost Joe, he was in that plane wreck that happened, because planes always land, always get to their destination.
I think those are great things to finish on, Eduardo. And I'm very, very grateful for your time. And thank you. Thank you for being part of the group.
You're amazing. And I love your tone of voice.
Oh, I'll cut that bit out. That's embarrassing.
Take care, my friend. I'm gonna tag you in social media. All right.
Thank you very much. That's brilliant. Thanks.
Bye.
Excellent. Thank you for listening to the Love Fly podcast. I hope you found it useful. Now, as always, if you need any extra help, please join our Love Fly Facebook group. You can also follow us on Instagram at loveflyhelp. And also, if you go to our website, which is lovefly.co.uk/shop, you can see other ways that you can get some help. Thanks for listening.